Eli stood at the edge of his field, boots buried in soft, ruined soil. Deep tire tracks cut through his crops like scars, fresh and deliberate. It was not just carelessness anymore. It was disrespect. His fists tightened at his sides. They had crossed a line, and now something had to be done. Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you have not, and hit that notification bell so that you will not miss any new stories. He looked at the shattered stems of his young corn, the broken irrigation pipe, the tire still lodged half an inch into his wife's flower bed. His heart thudded not from rage, but from a cold, creeping certainty. He tried signs, he tried asking, no one had listened, but now they would. By sunrise the next morning, Eli would be out in his field again, not to plead, not to protest. Eli Bauer had always believed in the honesty of land. If you put in the hours, fed it, tilled it, spoke to it even when no one was around, it would repay you in kind. A strong cup of coffee, a clean pair of boots, and a stretch of blue sky over his fields. That was enough. He lived just outside of town on a patch of farmland passed down from his grandfather, who had once farmed the land with nothing but a mule and his own grit. Over the years, the tools changed. Eli now used a tractor instead of a mule, and the old barn had electricity running through it, but the soul of the land remained the same. His wife Margaret had grown up in the same county. They had met at a church potluck, bonded over their mutual dislike of sweet pickles, and had been inseparable ever since. While Eli tended to the crops, Margaret cared for the garden and the house. They had no children, no modern distractions, no desire to leave the land they had built their life upon. But everything changed when the Silvermart opened next door. It started with flyers, bright orange ones, stuffed into mailboxes and pinned to grocery store boards. Grand opening, Silvermart Super Tour. Eli did not think much of it. Another store was just another place he did not need to go. But Margaret had been curious. It might save us the long trip. Into town, she had said, placing the flyer on the kitchen table. They say they've got everything, groceries, tools, even gardening supplies. Eli nodded, skeptical, but when the opening day rolled around, they drove over in the pickup truck. It was a massive building, soulless and gray, with parking lines as far as the eye could see. Inside, it was loud and bright and filled with people from all corners of the county. Still, it was not all bad. Eli found a new spade and a set of gloves that looked sturdier than his current ones. Margaret wandered the seed aisle for what felt like ages before picking out a packet of rare pink forget-me-not seeds. She looked at them like they were treasures. "These were my mother's favorite," she said softly, holding the packet as though it might crumble. Eli smiled. "Then let's get you a patch of your own." They returned home with a trunk full of supplies and a sense of unexpected satisfaction. Maybe the store was not such a bad thing after all. The very next morning, as Eli made his way toward the southern field, something strange caught his eye. A small silver car half tucked into the edge of his property. The soil was damp from a light rain the night before, and the car's tires had left deep impressions in the earth. It was not hard to figure out what had happened. The Silvermarting lot had overflowed, and someone, maybe in a rush, maybe just lazy, had decided Eli's field looked like a convenient alternative. He walked up slowly, brushing his fingers over the crop stems nearby. Some were flattened, others would recover. Still, irritation prickled in his chest. He stood nearby for a while, arms folded, until the driver, a young man in a hoodie, came out of the store, heading for the vehicle. "Morning," Eli called out. The man jumped slightly, surprised. "Oh, hey, this is private land, right?" Eli said, not unkindly, not really a place to be parking. The driver looked around as if noticing the field for the first time. "Oh, sorry, man, I did not know. The store lot was full." Eli nodded. "Happens. Just do not let it happen again." Yeah, of course," the man said, climbing into his car. With a wave and a vague apology, he drove off. The next few days passed without incident. Eli almost began to believe that the lone silver car had been a one-off, a moment of poor judgment by a single impatient shopper. But then came Saturday. That afternoon, Eli hauled 2 spare pieces of plywood from the barn and set up a makeshift signpost with red paint, thick and wet. He wrote in big block letters, "Private property, no parking, crops, and ground. Do not enter." He propped one at the corner near the main road and the other farther down near the back fence. It was not elegant, but it made his message clear. By Sunday morning, the signs had been knocked over. One lay face down in the mud, the other kicked onto its side like trash. There were 10 cars now. Eli stood frozen at the edge of his field. He did not even sip his coffee. Still, he had to try something. He crossed the road to Silvermart, the morning sun already heating the pavement. Inside, it was a swirl of noise and confusion. Blaring announcements, squeaking carts, and a child wailing in aisle 4. He waited at the front counter until someone directed him to the store manager. The manager was a man in his 30s, clean-shaven and wearing a name tag that read Jeff, store manager. He looked like he had not slept in days. "Good morning," Jeff said, trying to smile. "What can I do for you?" Eli did not waste time. "I own the land right across the road where your customers have been parking. That is private farmland, not overflow." Jeff's expression flickered. "Ah, Yes, we have had a few incidents. Reported incidents, Eli repeated. Is that what you call it when someone runs over an irrigation line? Jeff shifted uncomfortably. We have made several in-store announcements, and we have asked employees not to park there, but unfortunately, we cannot control where customers choose to leave their vehicles once they are off our property. You could put up cones, Eli offered, or signs, or have someone direct traffic. We've considered it, Jeff said, but honestly, we are understaffed and the parking expansion project has not been approved yet. So what you are saying is, it is my problem, Jeff winced. I am saying we sympathize, but legally there's not much we can enforce beyond our own property lines. Eli stared at him. I understand that, Jeff said, nodding. Really? We will make another announcement today. Eli gave him a long, tired look. Eli turned and walked out without another word. Margaret was waiting by the garden. Well, she asked. They do not care, Eli muttered. It is just easier to ignore me than walk 30 feet. You should call Rick. Rick, an old school friend and part-time lawyer, listened to the story. Unless you have got a fence or posted legal notice, there is not much you can do, Rick said. It is your land, but going to court is not worth the cost. So I should just let them ruin my field, Eli snapped. I am saying the law will not help unless you are ready to spend more than you will save. Eli ended the call in silence. Margaret brought him pie and sat beside him. What did Rick say? She asked. That the law is not going to help unless she can really afford it. By the next weekend, the issue had grown. Eli stared at least 20 cars scattered across his field, most sunk into the mud. Then he saw it. A white SUV parked directly on Margaret's flower bed. The one they dug together by hand. The delicate forget-me-nots were crushed, the soil gouged by tires. Eli felt something inside him twist. Margaret returned to herbs. Eli sat beside her, watching the horizon. Slowly, a plan began to form. He barely slept that night, lying awake beside Margaret, turning over ideas. By dawn, he had it. A quiet, sensible plan grounded in common sense and poetic justice. He dressed early, sipped coffee on the porch, and looked out over the misty fields. The flower bed was still ruined. What haunted him was not just the damage, it was the utter disregard. These were not desperate people. They were lazy shoppers, unwilling to walk a little farther. By 8 o'clock a.m., cars began arriving again, pulling into the southern field like they owned it. Eli waited at 9:30. He started his old Massey Ferguson tractor, hitched the plow, and drove straight into the field. He did not touch the cars. Instead, he plowed tightly around them, creating deep furrows and thick mounds of soil. Each vehicle became an island in a sea of loose earth, trapped but untouched. A woman in high-heeled boots stormed across the field fuming. Her face was red, her arms flailing with the kind of rage that comes not from injustice, but from inconvenience. Eli did not respond to the woman's shouting. He simply bent over and dropped more seed into the soil. "You've trapped my car," she barked. Eli straightened and looked at her calmly. "No, ma'am, I have planted my crop." She accused him of doing something illegal. He replied that it was his land and this was planting season. When she screamed that he built a moat around her car, he corrected her. "That is a furrow. In a week, it will be corn." She gaped, threatened to call the police, and stormed back to her car, tapping furiously at her phone. 2 cruisers arrived 20 minutes later. One officer looked lost. The other, Deputy Claire, was familiar with Eli. She approached and asked what was happening. Eli explained he was simply planting his field as planned. The cars were there when he arrived, so he worked around them. The younger officer accused him of boxing people in. Eli clarified that he had carefully avoided the cars out of respect, not malice. The woman returned, seething. Claire asked if she knew this was private property. She stumbled for an answer. Eli pointed out the missing signs, now discarded in a ditch. The younger officer retrieved them, clearly marked and muddied. Claire made her decision. Everyone parked in the field would be cited for trespassing. If the woman wanted to file a complaint, she could do so downtown. Outraged, she shouted that she would make the incident go viral. Claire simply nodded, saying that sometimes people go viral for doing the right thing. Eli resumed his work. Later that day, a video of Eli seating around the trapped cars surfaced online. It spread quickly with captions celebrating his quiet defiance. Comments praised him, calling him a hero. Margaret read them aloud that night as they sipped tea. Eli just nodded. "Maybe next year we plant sunflowers," he mused. Margaret agreed. From that point on, no one parked in Eli's field again. The incident, as it came to be called, reached well beyond town. News crews arrived, but Eli declined interviews. Margaret allowed one journalist to photograph the flower bed where new forget-me-nots had begun to bloom. The respect he earned lingered. At the farmer's market, strangers thanked him, shaking his hand. One man said it was the best thing he had seen all year. Eli did not seek recognition, but he did invest in a new sign professionally made and mounted in steel, reading, "Private farmland, no parking. Trespassers will be plowed around again." A small tractor illustration sat below the text. Margaret called it modern art. Eventually, the Silvermart addressed the issue, expanding their parking lot to prevent overflow. It worked, yet even with the added space, no one dared test Eli again. His field remained undisturbed. Corn sprouted tall and strong. Wild flowers bloomed along the borders, planted quietly by Margaret as a tribute.